Welcome to La Voz Informativa. I am Carlos Resto. We are transmitting through WNHH 103.5 FM New Haven and through www.lavozradiotv.com. And you can see us through Facebook, La Voz Hispana de Connecticut. And we are here to welcome our guests in this first show, Mr. Carlos Torre, member of the Board of Education of the New Haven Public Schools. And we're going to discuss all the controversy in different point of view, what's going on with the hiring of the new leader of the public schools in New Haven. We have, if you are following through the news in the last few months, it has been a very, very long process, and there have been a lot of area when the students, parents, leaders, and members of the Board of Education have been very dedicated to find the true leader of this department for the next 2 years, and had been a lot of issues through the process. Carlos, welcome.
Thank you. I'm very glad to be here.
It's a pleasure to come here to the studios. We try to start this program to have a very understanding what's going on. Now, for how long you have been member of the Board of Education?
Well, I've been a member for a total of 22 years. Over the last 24 years, we had term limits. So after 10 years, I had to leave, and then I was asked to come back 2 years after that. So I've been on for 22 years over the last 24.
Carlos, how many members are the Board of Education, to the audience can understand how many are the numbers?
Well, currently it's 7. We used to be 8, but with the change in the charter, the city charter, we were supposed to have 8, and at the last minute somehow it came out 7, so that's what we have right now.
We'd like to start with your experience through the process. You said 22 years.
Mm-hmm.
And if you can give it a little background, what's happened the last 22 years through your experience to the Board of Education? That way we can see what happened in the past.
Sure. And
what's happening in the present, and what we can see in the future.
Mm-hmm.
Can you give a little story about it?
Sure. First, about 24 years ago, when I first joined the board, it wasn't the smoothest action. It took us about 2.5 to 3 years to kind of clean that up, and we did. And after that, the board functioned very well. Matter of fact, we were able to get a whole lot of things done. A lot of people would like-minded in some areas and not in others, but the idea was that we would function under the premise that if I agree with you, I will support you. If I disagree with you, I will oppose you. But it'll first be behind closed doors, and if that doesn't work, then we'll open the door, right? And we were able to get, because we respected each other. We had each other's best interest in mind. And, you know, most of us, or a lot of us at one point or another, were educators, because former Mayor DeStefano was not afraid to appoint educators to the board, which is rare, very rare. Most boards of education in this country do not have educators. Some have one, and maybe every so often you might have one at 2. At one point, we had 5 educators on the board out of 8. So that, I think, speaks well to the former Mayor DeStefano in terms of his dedication to having people on there who know what they were talking about, who knew how to run schools, you know, how to structure educational processes, that sort of thing. Unfortunately, things have changed. We've been able to, I don't know how long you want me to go on this, because I could.
No, we can, we try to establish your experience first.
Okay.
in the Board of Education, but we can talk about your profession to people understand when you mention about education, what is your job and your titles. You can describe in a few sentences if
Sure.
you can.
Sure. Well, as I said, the board worked very collaboratively. And we had our differences, but we ironed them out with respect and recognizing each other's needs, but also recognizing each other's talents. And that was very important because currently that is not happening. But that's another issue. I imagine you're going to ask me about
Definitely,
that.
I will go to that point. We have to remind you that you are listening through WNHH 103.5 New Haven, and you can see us through La Voz Radio TV, radiotv.com. Carlos, I know you are Puerto Rican. You are professor in Southern
Yes.
State University. You got a lot of experience working in education, a high level education. And now we would like to know, in those 22 years, what is the percentage of the Latino students, minority students, had changed in the last 22 years that you have been part of the Board of Education?
Well, when I first joined the board, like I said, around 24 years ago, Latinos were the second largest group, always have been since I've been in New Haven. However, it was around maybe 30-some%, and African Americans were 40-some%. Right now, it is totally flip-flopped. A lot of people have refused to believe that, but when you show them the numbers, it's, they can't question it. Right now, it's the average because it fluctuates up and down, and then with the hurricane in Puerto Rico and
that's a part that we would discuss.
and people in Mexico coming and whatever else, plus a lot of Dominicans and Ecuadorians and Peruvians and so forth. We are currently roughly 47% of the population. African American, yes, and African Americans have gone to about 37, maybe 38%. So that the proportions have flipped in the 20-some years that I've been on the board.
That was a big part in the last 22 years, the change in 2009, based on the history of the town, of the city, with Mayor Sarno when they tried to change the Board of Education to a new system. Can you tell us a little bit about that, please?
Well, for the longest time, there have been many people in the city that have wanted to go to a totally elected board. We were the only board in the state and one of the few in the country that was appointed. Yeah, the mayor, whoever he or she was, would automatically be a member of the board and would get to appoint the other 7 people because we were an 8-member board. With the changes in the charter, what has happened is that we've gone down to 7. 2 of those are elected, 4 are appointed, and the mayor, again, is automatically a part.
That will be number 7. Now, we discussed probably the news, people that had not the history, not following the story about the Board of Education in New Haven. The last few months had been very controversial about looking for a candidate to the whole nation, and then find the candidates and then find the finalists, and have been a lot of question about how the process had been. I'm going to go only to last month. There was a protest on November about elected officials, bodies, students, high school students, teachers, parents went to the city hall and was doing a protest for the finalists that was elected or selected, let's put it this way, by the board or alderman. And through that process,
The Board of Education,
I'm sorry, we heard a lot of point of view by the parents, a lot of point of view by the elected officials and the students. And I know there was a controversy when they vote 4-3. That was the final, I think 2 weeks ago, and it was a lot of aggressive words, challenge situation between the chairman and member of the board. Can you explain a little bit what really happened in that area from your point of view to help our listeners?
It's somewhat complex. Let me see how I can, put it in few words. Essentially, we had to get rid of the former superintendent. It just simply wasn't working out. And so then we needed to get a new superintendent. That is a process that usually takes around 3 months, 3 to 6 months, no longer than that in most cases. And so we embarked on that. We hired a firm that gets paid a total of around $40,000 or so, because they charge like $25,000 plus then expenses and all kinds of other things. So it comes up to roughly around $40,000. The people, one of the people who was in charge of the subcommittee to run this, because we decided that the board as a whole would be the committee, but then there was a small subcommittee to actually do the day-to-day kinds of things, make some decisions, bring them back to the full board, etc. That one member in particular just kept delaying, and essentially did virtually nothing for many months, more than it would have taken to do the entire search and screen process. And at some point, we decided, no, we just can't allow that to happen. And the president of the board, Dr. Ed Joyner, then appointed Chair Dawson and myself to that subcommittee as well. To back up a little bit, in the meantime, the person who was the president, Daisy Gonzalez, died. And so we were left without a president. Dr. Joyner was the vice president, so he automatically became the president. And it was Daisy Gonzalez who had appointed Darnell Golson to kind of run the day-to-day kinds of things. She also appointed another person to be a co-chair, but that person did not want to work with Mr. Golson, and so decided not to do that. And so Mr. Golson was doing it essentially by himself. Nothing happened. We got word from the search firm that on so many occasions they had asked him about doing this, moving forward, putting together a community meeting, getting feedback from all of the sectors, from teachers to communities, parents, students, etc. Virtually little, if anything, was done. So when the board president decided to appoint Chair Dawson and myself to that committee, he refused to accept that, and it just went back and forth, and we moved ahead.
And during that time, somebody was replaced. I mean, we have a new member of the Board of Education, Jamel Cotto.
Okay, no, Jamel was not there yet because there is a new process now.
Okay.
It used to be that the mayor could just appoint whomever, and that person was automatically a member of the board. Now, with the new charter, the mayor still appoints, but it has to be approved by the Board of Alders.
Yes.
And the Board of Alders had not approved his nomination as yet. So it took a while before he was approved. So in the meantime, we went down to 6. And all kinds of problems. I mean, everything that you can imagine. They would not let us function because we were now 6. And they claimed to have the majority, and then they started actually we had the majority for a while, but because of that they started to be absent. They did not show up to the meetings so that we would not have a quorum. We had 4 people who would show up constantly, but the bylaw said that our quorum was 5.
And you never had it.
And so we weren't, the mayor and Mr. Golson were absent for several meetings in a row. Right? And so we weren't able to move. So what we did, because we had to open the school year, this was back in August or so, we had to hire teachers, we had to hire principals, we had to move a lot of issues. We decided that if needed to be, we would take our lumps later, but we were going to move ahead and hire whoever we needed to hire, regardless of whether they claimed that we had a
authority or not.
or that we had a quorum or not.
We have to remind our listeners that I am Carlos Resto, and La Voz Informativa. My guest today is Carlos Torre, member of the Board of Education of New Haven. And you are listening through WNHH 103.5 FM New Haven and through www.lavozradiotv.com. You can see us in Facebook, de La Voz Hispana de Connecticut. Carlos, now thank you for being the timeline. We're gonna jump on a little bit ahead. I have a question that probably you can elaborate and present in a sense, like be a 22-year member of the Board of Education. He says, after multiple challenges to the process of electing a new president, the Board of Education choose a person whose credentials have also been questioned. Do you believe that process was transparent?
Which process now? Because we've had several incidences with that. One was when the mayor decided she wanted to be president of the board. The other one was when she left that position and Daisy Gonzalez came on. And then the third one was when Daisy died. And so the vice president took over.
Let's make it when the Mayor Tony Harp took charge of that seat and start from that point. I know we can talk for a long time.
Sure.
What happened those months, the process, but we are now tonight. I think in Wilbur Cross will be some type of forum for the candidate. Let's start from that point on.
Okay.
Do you believe that the process has been transparent?
No.
Why?
Well, first of all, I was the president at the time, and the mayor called me into her office.
Mm-hmm.
I had word ahead of time. Somebody had let me know that that's what she wanted to talk about, that she wanted to be president of the board. So I figured, what the heck, let's talk about this and we'll figure it out. But when I got there, she talked to me for about an hour and it didn't mention that at all. And we resolved a lot of issues and we talked about plans and whatever. And at some point I got up to start leaving, thinking the meeting was over. And she just said, "Oh, one more thing. I'd like to try my hand at being president of the board." And I said, "Well, Madam Mayor, let me give you some reasons why I think that's a really bad idea." And I went down 6, 7, or 8 different reasons why I thought that was inappropriate. First of all, such things as, conflict of interest. She's on the board. She does appointing to the board, and now she is the president of the board. And it sounded also like there might be some illegality to that. We checked out the law, and apparently nobody in Connecticut ever thought that a mayor would also want to be the board president. Therefore, it was silent. There were no statutes, there were no laws or anything that said that a mayor could not be the president. But again, that was a very, very bad idea. In the meantime, I said to her, I tell you what, I think it's a bad idea, but if you tell me that because you're going to be your mayor and you're going to be president, that will facilitate getting us resources for our students, getting all of the kinds of things that we do, bettering the educational process that we've already, done fairly well with. If you tell me that, I will not only support you, I will nominate you. And at that point, she couldn't believe me. She asked me 3 more times if I would support her. I said, "Look, I have no idea what kind of people you deal with on a daily basis, but my word is my bond. I told you I would support you, and I told you I will nominate you, and that's the reality. I don't go back on my word. Maybe you do that with other people, but I don't." And so I did support her, and I did nominate her. And as I had warned her, it turned out to be disastrous, because every single meeting that she presided over was bickering and people yelling at each other, and all kinds of havoc broke loose. The only meeting that she presided over, I don't know, there are 25, we met twice a month, so times 12, that's around 25, 30 meetings that she presided over. The only one that was peaceful and productive was the very last one, because it was Christmas of last year. People, wanted to go, and we know that we knew she was not going to be running anymore. So it was a very nice, peaceful meeting, which I pointed out to her. You wanted to teach us how to run a proper meeting. I had no idea that a proper meeting was supposed to have yelling and screaming. If I had known that, I would have yelled and screamed, for all the time.
Carlos, we have to make a pause for identify our station, our sponsor. Now we are people understand in what point of the timeline. I'm sorry. It's a new president of the Board of Education, and now we're gonna follow what happened next. Mr. Producer.
Me vieron a mí, no mi adicción. Fueron honestos conmigo.
Dijeron que no sería fácil, no me dejaron rendirme.
El equipo de trabajo fue generoso y compasivo. Fueron firmes cuando necesitaron serlo.
Aprovecha la oportunidad, cree en ti mismo. Si usted, un miembro de su familia o un amigo está sufriendo de adicción al opio, llame a nuestra línea de ayuda para tratamiento de Suboxone de Cornell Scott Hillhouse Center al 203-503-3755. Tenemos clínicas localizadas en New Haven y Ansonia.
Imagina la sonrisa de tus hijos corriendo por el patio con Max. Mientras tú y tu esposo sentados en el jardín, bajo un sol radiante y con tu bebida favorita, planean el próximo paseo familiar.
Ahora deja de imaginar y ponle fecha a tus sueños. Es hora de convertir una casa más del barrio en un verdadero hogar. Llama a Prisma hoy y aprende cómo podría ser dueño de casa. Te ayudamos con préstamos convencionales, de gobierno, con Tax ID. Sí, con Tax ID. Y lo que es mejor, en tu idioma, de la A a la Z. Así de simple. 203-683-0600. 203-683-0600. Prisma Lending Group, tu hipoteca latina. Igualdad de oportunidades en préstamos para vivienda, sujetos a aprobación de crédito.
Transmite en su canal de frecuencia modulada estereofónica multiplex La Voz Radio, desde New Haven, Connecticut, al mundo.
Welcome to La Voz Informativa. I am Carlos Resto. We are transmitting through WNHH 103.5 FM New Haven, and you can see us through lavozradiotv.com, and you can see in Facebook La Voz Hispana de Connecticut. We are discussing here our guest Carlos Torre, member of the Board of Education, and we are discussing what happened when we have the new president. That was our Mayor Tony Harp. I have a question for you now.
Sure.
He said, do you believe that the mayor influenced the decision of the board to choose the new superintendent, since she came out publicly favoring the person chosen?
Definitely. It was very obvious. At one particular point, I don't know how much you know about all of the candidates, but there were a total of 41 candidates. Only one Latino among all of those candidates. And immediately, her and Mr. Golson were trying to make him look bad so that no one would even think about voting for him. But his resume was too good. As a matter of fact, out of the 41, we ended up with 7 semifinalists, and he was among those 7 finalists. And of those 7 finalists, 2 people really stood out. I can say his name now because I think everybody knows. Originally, we weren't supposed to put those names out there, but they did, and so it came out in the paper and everything.
I have a question for that part.
Okay.
And I like to mention who are the 3 finalists before they they pick the number 1 now at this point. What were the last 3 finalists?
Well, it was 4 finalists.
Yes.
Because there was one person, Brown,
Doctor,
ended up with 9 votes. And then there were 3 more tied for second place with 8 votes.
Wow.
So it was very close. And I suggested, why don't we just move the 4 forward? Because we had talked about maybe moving 2, 3, and sometimes we said 4. I said, why don't we move the 4? I said, no, we can't do that, et cetera, et cetera. And so immediately the question was asked, who's for eliminating Ramos, the only Latino there? Who, the parents were in favor of, the students were in favor of, and 3 out of the 7 board members were in favor of. But the hands went up in unison. It was synchronized. And I mentioned it, immediately the hands were like somebody was giving a cue and they were going up at exactly the same time. I mentioned that. I said, wow, that looked like precision swimming.
Yeah.
At which point, the mayor said to me, then it must have been a thing of beauty. And I said, you're right, it was a thing of beauty. It was so precise.